Hello, hello, all of my beautiful freaking people. Welcome back to another episode of FML Talk. Today, we are diving in to probably every other message I get in my DM, which is how do I get over him? What the fuck is wrong with me? And how can I let this motherfucker go? So sit back, grab a cocktail, and welcome to FML Talk.
Oh my God. Wait, how old was the other girl?
19. Can you believe that shit?
Hey, this is Gabrielle Stone.
Good book?
Have you gotten to chapter 6 yet? He did what? 48 hours?
What a dick.
Yeah, but have you seen all the photos on her Instagram?
And this is FML Talk.
Oh, no, she didn't.
Y'all know I love a good self-love cocktail and occasionally an actual cocktail. I have always notoriously hated the taste of alcohol and needed it disguised in a good mixology cocktail until I discovered Neft. Because Neft is a premium vodka in its purest form with non-GMO rye, it has a light taste full of character. Not only is Neft one of the best tasting vodkas I've ever had, it also comes in the cutest packaging I have ever seen. Their unbreakable barrel keeps it chilled for up to 6 hours, making it the perfect drink to take just about anywhere. Join me in adding a little actual cocktail into your self-love cocktail with Neft vodka. Cheers! You guys, I kid you not when I say the majority of people that reach out to me after, they've read the book and listened to the podcast are, I can't let go of my ex. How do I let go of my ex? Gabrielle, can you do an episode on how to get over my fucking ex? So, your wish is my command. Today, we are bringing on Tess Brigham. She is a millennial therapist and really specializes in this type of work. Those obsessive thoughts that we can't let go, those daydreaming fantasies where you're like, fuck, I just wish I could get this out of my brain. We are going to dive into all of that with her today. So let's get into the interview. Tess Brigham, welcome to FML Talk. I cannot tell you how excited I am to have you here because of the expertise that you have, and it's literally what gets sent into my DMs on a daily basis.
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to answer these questions.
Yes, it's so important, and it happens so often when we're in these relationships, whether they be toxic relationships or if you're just trying to let go of a breakup that, was a long time coming, where we can't let go of our ex and we have these issues of getting them out of our system, if you will. So I guess to start off, I really, truly, not kidding, on the daily will have someone say, I just can't stop thinking about this person, or I know he's bad for me, but I keep going back, or I just can't fully get over him. So what's your experience as to kind of like the brain stuff behind that of why we can't get someone out of our system?
Yeah, well, I mean, and the thing is that you're obsessing over this ex or former relationship because of that push and pull, right? Like if it's almost, if you think about it, like how addicted we get to emails or anything else, it's the same thing. Like emails are almost like a slot machine. Like, will it be good? Will it be good stuff?
Yes.
Like happy stuff. And texts are like when we hear the ding of a text, like, ooh, what's this text going to be? And so our brains are conditioned for when we get a little bit of something and then it's taken away, a little bit more, big payoff, small payoffs, like that almost that addiction to, well, this might be it, or this might be really good. This might be a great email or whatever. And I think that when you have these relationships where there's a lot of push pull, and there's definitely, from what I've seen, and I've been in these relationships myself, where there is that, anxious and avoidant, if you talk about attachment types, and usually it's the female who meets this guy who sweeps her off her feet or says the things that she wants to, dying to hear. Or even, is a combination of everything they think they've been looking for. Mm-hmm. But he's, sometimes he calls, sometimes he doesn't. I should say text. I'm old. Sometimes he texts, sometimes he doesn't. You're never quite sure when he's going to text. You don't know what you're going to get. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Is this, all of that. That push pull is the thing that gets us hooked, because if you are always feeding quarters into the machine, knowing I'm going to get 3 cherries, well, why keep playing? You know, but if you are never quite sure what you're going to get, then that's what makes it exciting. And there could be something really good and a payoff. And so when you have this push pull and you're getting someone who's kind of pushing you away, and suddenly they stop pushing you away, suddenly they don't want that, it instantly feels like, oh, I did something right, or oh, I'm good, or oh, it's happening. Right. And that's the piece of it. So someone who and I see this a lot, right, with our friends. I'm like, why does she keep going back to that guy? He's such a loser. You know, all of your friends can see it so clearly. And the thing is that when you're in it, when that person's saying yes, yes, no, no, yes, right, that is what hooks you in. And that's why it makes it so hard.
I'm so glad that someone else said it to validate what I preach on this show all the time. You know, we talk about those love goggles that go on when you're in that relationship. And like you said, all of your friends can be like, bitch, what is happening? Like, you need to leave. This is a toxic situation. And you're just like, no, but here's all the reasons why it's not. And let me excuse his behavior this way. It happens so often. So for me, you know, the scenario that I give that all of my readers and now listeners know is with the man that kind of broke my heart before going on this Europe adventure, named Javier. And when we came back from that, it was a very breadcrumby situation. Are you familiar with the breadcrumbing turn?
When it first came up to me, I had to like look it up.
Google it.
Clients. But once I was like, oh yes.
Yes. Oh yes. So for everybody, for a little refresh, breadcrumbing is when, you know, you'll not hear from someone for a while, but then you'll get a text to be like, hey, just thinking about you. Or, you know, you'll get a call where someone kind of pops in and they're like, oh, hey. And the little things that keep you dangling on that hook, even though they're not showing up in the way that you want them to, they're not, you know, really putting in the time or effort or being there for you. And I went through that for so long. And I think that what you said a few moments ago about, you know, that push pull, being on that hook, being like, when is this person going to reach out to me? When is the next time I'm going to see him? Because you knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. Yes. And then because of that, you were, you know, energetically putting up this wall to other people or, you know, healthy things that were trying to come into your life because you were holding out for when that next breadcrumb was coming.
Yeah. And that's the part that's really hard is it does require you to, when they comment on your Instagram photo or when they text you or when they show up with that phone call late at night, it's like, that's the moment in time where you have to say, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm done. And you either need to say it to them, like, you know, I know you're just calling to say hi, but I need to not know you and you need to move on. Or you have to make that decision for yourself. Because I think a lot of times people will say, oh yeah, that's in the past, whatever. But sure enough, if a text comes through, they're jumping right back in. But you have to consciously decide, like, I am done. And what's hard about that is when you say I am done to something, you are saying I'm done to all of the fantasies, all of the dreams, all of everything. Like, because this is the person in your mind that you've been obsessing about and loving, and they're the ones and they're the only one, and nobody, you go on other dates and nobody can be as great as they are, right? You go through all of that. And so there is that, you know, it's so hard, but you do have to be that one to say, I'm done. I deserve better. And I have to follow through on that. And I think a lot of times women, which I understand, which is, okay, well, maybe I'll keep doing this dance with this guy and I'll maybe date other people or, you know, and if I find someone else over here, I'll dump this, right? Like that idea of like, you know, let me keep all my options open. And I really,
I am women.
But I do. And maybe, listen, I'm a Californianer, so maybe it's the Californianer in me, but I really do energetically believe you have to say, I'm done.
Yes.
I'm done. And it requires you to go out on a limb on your own and say, okay, this is it.
Yeah. Which is so fucking empowering when you finally decide to do that. And it's true, like our thoughts are really fucking powerful, and they're going to create our reality in some way, shape, or form. So for example, with Javier, I was continuously, like you said, playing out those fantasies, those what ifs, those maybe we'll run into each other here. And that shit manifested in my life. Like, sure as shit, smack ran into each other at a fucking nightclub. And then this whole thing kind of started again. It was still toxic as all hell and not good for me. But I created that because of the fantasies and the thinking and the not choosing to say, okay, no more, we're done. The second I decided to put up that boundary and was like, okay, we are really done. We're not thinking about it anymore. We're not obsessing over anything. We're not fantasizing. The universe was like, oh, okay, she's really ready to be done now, and started delivering me all of this amazing stuff because I was no longer accepting so much less than my worth.
Yeah. Yeah. But it requires you to do that, because the thing is that that's the part that people don't quite understand, is you have to be the one to say it and say, I might be floating out on the limb all by myself. Like, it might be me alone for years. I mean, I don't know. I'm willing to energetically choose myself over this person.
Yes.
Which I think, especially for women, it's really hard because we're conditioned to be nice, to do this, to do that, to be the one, all of that. But it's incredibly powerful and incredibly scary. So that's why people don't do it as much as they need to, because it's scary, and I understand that.
Absolutely. So what are your tips when someone is in this situation and they're having the fantasies and having the obsessive thoughts, and they're like, fuck, I just can't let this person go? What are your tips on how to kind of like retrain your brain into fully letting that go? I've talked about before, kind of whenever that thought comes up, almost like the rubber band technique, where you would like snap a rubber band on your wrist, but be like, no, I am not going to go there, and like consciously change your thought to like elephants or ice cream or whatever, what have you, to really retrain that thought process like a muscle of like, nope, we're not going there. So what are some of your tips to try and get out of the thick of it when people are in it?
Yeah. Well, that's a great one. And that's one that where you just, your mind starts to go there, and it's like, nope, you're done. Moving on. Focus on something else. I think another one is a big reason, is being able to see the person as the whole person. And you mentioned this earlier, this idea of, right, you have the honeymoon period, and they're so great and it's so wonderful. And what happens is, someone might show you this relationship, a year-long relationship, and the first 2 months were great and the rest of it was terrible. And the person, when you're obsessing, you're going back to those first 2 months. So it's really about you stopping yourself and thinking like, look at the whole relationship. Like, you cannot just focus on the first couple months. Like, look at everything, because you want to take that person off the pedestal. You're obsessing about, we obsess about idols because we put them on pedestals and we make them unreal. So take the person off the pedestal and really look at them as a whole person of every single thing that they're doing. And maybe it might take one of your friends, and you say, okay, tell me everything that he did that I told you that was awful. Like, write it down for me, so that every time I can go and pick up the paper and look at it and really see it. Because you have to stop making this person the ideal. They're not.
Oh my God.
From it.
Oh my God. You're really preaching such fucking hard facts right now. And it's so, I resonate so much with so much of what you just said. It's putting them on that pedestal, and especially in the very beginning, when everything is amazing, especially in a love bombing type of situation, which is what I experienced. And it was like Prince Charming, like everything is perfect. And then whenever it is that everything changes, or you get your heart broken, or they start becoming different, or there's disrespect involved, it's like you built this person up to be someone who they were showing you that they were for the first 2 months. Everybody can be fucking amazing for 2 months. I mean, it takes longer than that to get past some of the like bullshit layers of society that we are programmed to kind of like put on, on a first date or when we're courting someone. And you continually keep that person in this mindset of like, this is who I believe them to be. And then they start showing you, no, this is not who I am, over and over and over again. And you have to believe them when they show you that. It's like, you can't keep hoping and imagining that this person is going to be someone that they were never capable of being in the first place.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you're someone also who is, and I'm always shocked. I'm always shocked when I see something where, someone's lied about something publicly or they've stolen something. And right, if you're someone who doesn't lie or steal, or you live an honest life, like, it's really hard to think, well, wait a second, all of these were lies? Like, because if you're not a liar, you're not spotting lies.
Right.
And so that's the part too, is it's really hard to believe, like, well, wait a second, did he lie about all that? Like, that can't be true. And so that it takes your brain a little bit of time to like catch up to, oh, wow, this person could flat out lie to me. And then our egos get involved in that because, well, what was the truth? What wasn't the truth? And if you're seeking so much validation from that person, if that relationship was giving you a lot of validation, to then have to let go of the lies and see them as lies, you then have to admit to yourself, oh, wow, like maybe he wasn't in love with me as much as I thought. And I have to really, and again, it doesn't mean that you don't deserve love. It just means that you have to recognize that, oh, wow, I was placing a lot in what this other person thought of me or validated for me. And I need to stop and say, I'm a lovable person. I deserve love. And at the same time, this person didn't love me.
100%.
It's so hard. It's painful. It's incredibly painful.
Yeah. And so with the pain, when you're fully, apart from this person now, whether you've broken up or it's a breadcrumbing situation, there's a lot of, I feel like people experience a lot of shame when they can't get rid of these thoughts and they're constantly like having the daydreams or the fantasies. How do you cope with and kind of let go of that shame that comes with those feelings?
Yeah. And shame is such a hard emotion. I don't know if you talk about Brene Brown on this podcast, if you mention her, but she's one of the leading experts on vulnerability and shame.
Yes.
And I truly believe shame is one of those feelings that is like, we will do anything to avoid shame, anger, frustration. And one of the ways in which is to dig into, like, no, this person's like this, no, they're like that, as opposed to coming over to the shame. And so shame is very much how you perceive it to be. And so it can be difficult, but it's really about you being able to say, I'm not going to shame myself for this. I feel shame. I want to retreat. I want to not talk about it. I want to, live in my fantasy land and just want this to go away. Or you can decide for yourself, like, I don't need to broadcast it on social media, but that I'm not going to be shameful of this. Yeah. And I think this is a lot of what, I think one of the things, because I specialize in working with young adults, like Gen Z, millennials, and I'll get these older generations that'll say to me, how do you work with those young people? And I'll say, these generations have done so much for all of us in many different ways. And I think one of the biggest ones is that they come to the light. You see this constantly with women coming forward, people coming forward, talking about these things that happened to them that created so much shame. And they're willing to say, this is what happened to me. So I do see this. It's good. I see this trend moving where people are starting to see that if I hide, like, there's an expression in the drug and alcohol world that you're only sick as your secrets. So if I hide these secrets away, if I do this, then I'm just shaming me. Everything's internal. And I need to start shame. The shame needs to go towards the guy. The shame needs to go towards society. The shame needs to go this way, outward from me. But that again is that's just identifying your thoughts and being able to shift them and change them and mold them. And again, we are so, I don't know what the statistic is. It's something like, 95% by the time we're 30, like 95% of our habits are so ingrained because the neurons have been firing in such a way for so long that it's so dug in there, and so that's the part that's really important to understand is these thought patterns, these behaviors, all of this, you've been doing this for decades. And so for you to say, oh my God, I'm thinking about him, let me shame myself, right? Slap myself, shame myself. Don't. It takes a long time to stop. Yeah. You've been thinking about this person obsessively for a year. It's not going to take you 2 days to get over it. It's going to take you a minute here, right?
Right. Yeah. I saw this post recently, and it was, a cutout of the human body and highlighted where we experience certain emotions. So it was like, love, and the heart was lit up, and like anger and grief and nervousness and shame. When you got to shame, it was the whole body was affected. And it, the post was inferring that like shame is the worst human emotion one can feel, and the one that we least know what to do with, and how much it like affects your physical body when you're going through it. And I remember I was doing a session with my therapist. This was a long time ago. And I was talking to her about, these thoughts that I was having about my ex. And I was like, I just don't know how to get fucking rid of them. And I feel crazy. And then I, go down a rabbit hole and feel guilty. And she was like, okay, so why are you not just saying okay to the thoughts? Like, why are you placing, because the only person that's placing any of the guilt and shame feelings is you. So instead of having the thought come up and being like, shaking a finger at yourself and being like, shameful, why don't you just acknowledge the thought and then decide to let it go and have a different one? And I was like, oh shit, what a fucking concept that is. To like not beat myself up for this, because like A, I'm human, and B, like I've been through some traumatic shit with this individual. So like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to not place the shame on yourself when you don't have to.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I talk about emotions with my clients, what I really want them to understand, and sounds like your therapist did this beautifully, is there's 2 levels to it. There are the thoughts, and there's the thoughts that we have. Those thoughts lead to our feelings, right? There's the thoughts that we have, which are totally okay and acceptable. Those we need to accept. Then there's the judgment of our thoughts. That's where all the problems lie, right? There's nothing wrong with your thoughts. There's nothing wrong with your feelings. It's the judgment that you're placing. That is, and if you can, as much as you can, see, is this, okay, my thought is, I feel this, or this is the thought, versus the should, when you say should and would and I could, like all of that, that's when those words come up. But it's really starting to understand, like, okay, these are my thoughts and my feelings, and they're okay. And these are the judgments, and the judgments are from, right, society and life and myself and blah, 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 all of that mixed in together. And that I don't have to listen to.
Yes.
Right. Because everyone always pushes this, oh, you got to feel your feelings, feel this, feel. And you do, you have to feel your feel, like you have to get through things, but you can go through something without shaming yourself. And so a technique that has been used 1,000,001 times, you've seen people talk about it in terms of like helping people's self-esteem. But one of the best things you can do for yourself, especially women, is stop and say, okay, if this was my best friend, this was someone that I really loved and cared about, what would I say to them about it? Like, how would I tell them to think about this particular issue or thought?
And also because we're always so much nicer to our best friends and the people that we love than we are to ourselves. Where if we're in front of our best friend, we'd be like, okay, so I'm going to give you a little tough love. And like, it's not really the greatest thing that you're doing this. And maybe like, here are some other ways that it would be better. And with ourselves, we're like, you're fucking horrible. You're terrible. What the fuck is wrong with you? You're a piece of shit. And it's like, that self-talk is never going to get us to the outcome that we're trying to achieve or make us feel any better in the fucking process.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and our friends can always see us for who the full person of who we are, versus in our minds, we feel like we have to be perfect or whatever it is, whatever the idea in our heads of what we are supposed to be as a human being going through life.
Yeah. So let's talk about love bombing a little bit. Are you familiar with the term?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know. There are all these like new age terms that like I never even knew what love bombing was until I was fucking scrolling on TikTok and saw it and was like, oh shit, that happened to me. But I think the more we can, talk about them and give them names like the love bombing and the breadcrumbing, the more people can feel like they're not fucking crazy when they go through these experiences. So when people go through, love bombing or a narcissistic relationship or any type of toxic dynamic in a relationship, there's also like a chemical, psychological thing that happens to you. It's not just like, and then there's a breakup and you're in shambles, and people are like, and now I'm crazy and I should be over this by now. But when stuff like that happens to you, there's some psychological stuff that you're trying to recover from and some traumas that have been put in place that you're now trying to rewire. Mm-hmm. How do you go about unpacking that when you go through, any type of traumatic breakup?
And that part's really hard. And I will say it's hard to sort of answer this question on this larger sense without like knowing little details of what people are going through, because trauma is so personal to you and what happened to you and how you saw it.
And the responses that come from that.
Exactly. I mean, I think, right, that if you think about something like love bombing, what is so difficult, what is the big thing with love bombing is we were just talking about this idea of how we see ourselves versus how other people see us. So someone's coming into our world and seeing us in such a light, in such a way, in such this perfect way. And it's a little bit of like, this is what I've been waiting for right? This is either what I've been waiting for my whole life. Someone finally sees me and finally gets me, whatever that feeling is, because as human beings at the core, the biggest thing that we all struggle with, no matter who you are, what your background is, at the very core, we just want to feel like we're enough. Yes. We just want to feel like we are good enough, pretty enough, this enough, that enough for the people, for the world. And the biggest fear in our lives is I'm not enough. And so here you are, you're bebopping along. And so that's the whole part about trauma and where you're at in your life when the person comes into it. Because if you're in this really vulnerable state of never feeling like you're enough, never feel like parents were always telling me how I could be better. I had a sibling who was better than me. So they're telling me how, right? If you've spent your entire life not feeling like you're enough and someone comes into your orbit and says, you are enough. You are enough. And you're more than enough. You are amazing and wonderful. And all of these things. And I see you and I want to be with you and all of this, like you have this and it's there. And then for that same person to slowly tell you, no, you're not enough in these ways. No, you're not enough in these ways. You're this, right? How damaging that can be, because now you're sort of like, oh, wait a second. Was I ever enough? Am I not enough? Right? Like who am I in all of this? And I think that's the part that is so difficult because, and I don't know what it is about some of these men and women. I shouldn't just narrow down men, but some men, women, people, they have a knack of finding people who really don't feel like they're enough or that there's something missing. So it doesn't mean that if you've been in this relationship where this person's love bombed you, that you've always felt like you weren't enough, but they might have met you right around a time where you were doubting it or where you're feeling vulnerable around it or something. And it's almost like, no, I'm going to come in and tell you and fill that hole inside of yourself. I'm going to fill that up. And then I'm going to slowly take it away and take it away and take it away and give you some back and then take it away and give it some back and take it away. So you're constantly sort of like trying to figure out, what should I be? Like, what should I do?
Seriously, everyone that's listening to that right now is probably laughing right along with me and going like, yep, that's exactly what Gabrielle went through with Javier. How interesting, like fucking textbook to a T. And it's so damaging when you don't know that there's a term for it, when you don't see like that, there's a blueprint kind of how these things go. And you just feel like you've been tossed aside and everybody else, like we were talking about, can clearly see that this isn't what you deserve, that this isn't okay. But you're like, no, you guys must not understand. This person has to love me because of what I just experienced with them. And it really messes with your brain to be like, no, this couldn't have happened to me because of that vulnerable state that they find you in.
Yeah, exactly. And then it becomes, then what happens is that because this person's kind of gotten into your mind and into your psyche, which is what these men and women are very, very good at doing, is that you stop trusting yourself. You stop trusting that you know what's good for you. You stop trusting that you know what's right. You stop trusting, like, does this feel right to me? Like, you almost stop trusting yourself and how you feel, because they've kind of, they're in that hole, they've gotten a hold of it and they're in there and they're messing around with it. And that's such a vulnerable spot, to be in, that that's the part that is so incredibly difficult. And it takes a long time to untangle, what's real, what's not real, who am I, who am I not, all of that. And which is also, why I think we see a lot of young people, these things happen to people at various ages, but, it is, this is why some men prey on younger women, like, because when you're not fully developed as a human being, it is really hard to say, well, wait a minute, hold on. No, that's not who I am. If you haven't had a lot of relationships in your life, if you haven't had a lot of experiences, suddenly it's like, oh, this is what love's supposed to feel like. And I think this is the other part of it too. And I blame rom-coms, and I blame a lot of what we see in the media, right? Like, it's changed considerably, but it's only really been in the last, 5 years that we're really seeing people talk about narcissism and dirty Johns and, all of these levels of things. But right, movies and have portrayed romance as being this anguish and heart gushing and right, like all of that stuff. And I've been married over 18 years, and I love my husband. He's a wonderful man, but it is not like a roller coaster of like, woo, excitement all the time, because real love, committed love with another person is kind of boring. It's day in, day out.
I'll get behind that. But that's what they say, is that when you find someone that you're going to commit to spending your life with, make sure you have that friendship and that bond and that compatibility. Because look, at some point, people can be like, that's not fucking true, and they're lying. That shit will fade. And there's ways to, spice things up and to like throw different stuff into the mix, of course. And that doesn't mean that like sex is just going to like dissipate and be boring for the rest of your life. But all of that passion and like craziness, that stuff will eventually fade. And you want to be with someone that is going to honor and respect you, make you fucking laugh till you pee yourself. And like that you have fun hanging out with. My boyfriend and I, like, we laugh because people talk about during the pandemic, it's like everyone either got divorced or started having babies. Like there was no in between. And we thrived during the pandemic because we were like, hell yes, we will hang out and snuggle and binge watch TV shows and we are fine. Like, because we just enjoy each other's company. And I think that's so important for people to have a grasp in reality on like what the expectations are, that it's not going to be this, insane, passionate roller coaster love affair for 20 plus years. And eventually like you're going to get motion sickness if that's the case. Like you don't want that for fucking 20 plus years. Like I can't imagine having that,
It's not sustainable. I mean, and so, right. So then you have to reconcile for yourself, like, well, what is it? What is love? Like, what is that? What is my life going to be? What's the meaning behind it? And right. Because we all want, and I say this to my clients all the time. I'm like, everybody wants, oh my God, passion, excitement. And I know they're going to show up for me the next day. And I said, the problem is these two things don't, you can have them in a relationship, but that grand, exciting passion and like, will they, won't they, is that goes
toxic as fuck.
And it goes completely against what makes us feel safe and secure.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so that's the problem. And I think that for a lot of people, if their relationships, especially, and I've had clients over the years where I've seen this, where their first relationship was so toxic that it's just, they keep getting back into these kinds of relationships over and over again. They can't stop themselves because their brains have been rewired of this is what love is. And
my God. Hi, I'm client again. I mean, it only took me one time to figure it out, but like, yes, that's so spot on. Like, you have to recognize like, oh shit, my definition of love has become toxic.
Yeah.
And I'm searching for this shit that I don't really actually fucking want.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So do you think there's a difference between, because we've talked a lot about how, you're having to let go of, a love bombing situation or a toxic relationship. If someone's relationship, ran its course and there was no cheating, there was no like toxic dynamic, they just like plain didn't work out. How does someone let go of that if they're just full on heartbroken in that sense? Like, is there a different process? Are we following the same guidelines of the, controlling the thoughts? Is there a different kind of, does that look different than if you're coming out of a more toxic dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some similarities and differences. I think for this case, like if your relationship or the marriage didn't work, but there wasn't some dramatic things that happened, I think that it's the process is, it's less about the obsession of like the woulda, coulda, shoulda, and what could have happened and all of that. And it's a lot more about loss and mourning, right? A lot of times you'll hear people talk about ending of a relationship. It's grief. That's why, right? Like they talk about, there's like the 50 most stressful things that can happen in your life. And I think number one is the loss of a spouse, death. The second one's divorce. And I'm like, they're pretty much the same, right? And I know that people who have lost partners hate it when people compare divorce to losing someone.
No, yes. I've lost a partner and I've gotten divorced and I will stand behind what you just said. I mean, there's differences, of course, but like it's very, it weaves in and out.
And the loss, it's not just about the loss of the person, it's the loss of what this person in your life represented to you, right? So you're losing this idea or picture of what you thought your life was going to look like, what you thought marriage was going to look like, you're losing, or this relationship was going to look like. And it's the loss of being, I think the other part of it too is being in this steady relationship, being in this secure place, and now having to kind of be out in the world on your own again, trying to figure things out. And I think that with these cases, it's much more of a back and forth, right? Like the obsession thing is all like obsessions are all one thing. This is much more of a, it feels good to be by myself and making my own decisions and doing my other things. Oh, it feels terrible. I hate this. And I think it's like a back and forth of, you're trying to get to the same thing. You're trying to get to this place of understanding yourself and understanding what did this relationship mean to me in my life? How do I take this information and move forward and make different choices, different mistakes, different everything? How do I do this differently? Because every relationship that we have, just like every job, just like every house, every city, changes us, right? We are not, we're not the same people. We are new people. And so each time, even moving to a new city, right? Each time you do that, you're kind of trying to figure out, who am I here now in this world? What does that look like? So it's not as dramatic, but it's just as difficult and painful. And the goal, which is always the goal, I always say to people, the goal is it's always about figuring out for yourself what did that experience mean to me? What can I take from it? What can I learn from it? What do I want to keep doing? And what do I want to do differently?
Yeah.
Right. That's it. And that's how you move forward, because a big concept that I teach a lot, especially I think it's been a big issue, is like this fear of failure, right? There's such because the end of a marriage or the end of a relationship is a failure, or this toxic guy that keeps pushing and pulling, like you feel like you failed to hook him in and like make him stay with you, or make him treat you well, that those life lessons, those failures are really, really important. And we can either see our failures as a flaw about ourselves, or we can see it as something to be learned in our lives and move forward.
Yeah.
And that's our choice.
Yeah.
That's everybody's choice.
Yeah. And going back to the comparing, the death of a spouse or a loved one that you're in a relationship with and divorce in some ways, and again, don't come for me, I've experienced both. Divorce in some ways has even more complicated emotions because grief fucking sucks. I've done episodes on it. I've experienced it. It's a fucking shit emotion to have to deal with. And you never know when you're fully through it, and it can hit you years later, and it's just shitty in all aspects. But there's grief, obviously, in losing a loved one, and there's grief in a divorce because you're mourning that person, because in a lot of ways, especially if you don't have kids and like you're moving on from them completely, they really did. It's like a person died. And the grief of, your mourning of this life that you had thought you were going to have and everything that encompasses. And then there's also the shame factor in the divorce. I will never forget when I found out I was getting divorced from my ex-husband, my first initial thought was like embarrassment. And oh my God, all of those people that came to my wedding, what are they going to think about this? And this is so like, I'm a fucking failure. So all of those complex emotions make divorce very weird and difficult to navigate because you're adding all these layers on. Usually with the death, which is horrible, and I wouldn't wish any on either of them on anyone, but it's just the grief that you're navigating. So it's very interesting to compare those two in that way.
Yeah. No, and it's very, very complicated. And I think, one piece is it's also the other layer of it is with divorce is, what were your own parents' marriage like? My parents are divorced, my husband's parents are divorced. Like, so both of us are going into this marriage thinking, hope this works, right? Like with no real sense of whether or not, it's going to work. And there is, and I've seen this a lot with people who they're so fearful of getting married because their parents had a horrible divorce and they don't ever want to go through that again or ever see that again. So they won't do that. Or parents stayed married and they saw how miserable that was. So they're going to get a divorce, right? Like that, the relationship that we have with divorce and our families and their perception of it and how we see it. I mean, that adds this whole other layer of, oh my God, what are people going to think? Should I, or shouldn't I? Right.
Yeah.
Like
and it's such a powerful emotion that I know a lot of people stay in marriages that they want to leave in some capacity and shouldn't be in because of the fear of that shame and embarrassment.
Yeah.
Or I have to stay for my kids, or what will they think? And I always say, your kids are going to be okay, and something in life is going to fuck them up. It will probably be you or something else will do it for you. But to not, you can't stay in an unhealthy situation for you and compromise yourself for them. Like they will thrive more if you're separated and you're both fucking happy and stoked on life.
Yes.
It's not worth risking, what are people going to think? Oh, the shame. Oh, the embarrassment. None of that is worth it. Like you will get through all of that. And none of that is going to be worth being miserable and compromising yourself. Like life is too freaking long and too freaking short all in one.
Yes.
To stay in something that is unhealthy and not giving you full happiness.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and that's the part that's really hard is I have, I'll hear this from people who might be having an affair and they're so fearful of telling their partner, right? I'm not happy in the marriage. I'm having this affair. And I'll always say to them, you're not doing them a favor by staying, you cheating on them or wanting to cheat on them or having had this affair and being really miserable. None of this is helping them at all. So while initially it is going to be incredibly painful and difficult, and they may be angry and resentful towards you, in the end, you both get to where you want to go. It's better for them as well. But again, that's a whole other level of relationships, right? Which is nobody wants to be a bad guy. Nobody wants to be a bad guy. No one wants to be the horrible person. Nobody wants to be that person. So
totally.
And
I say all the time with my ex-husband, like if he would have just come to me and been like, yo, I'm unhappy. We shouldn't have gotten married. I don't want to be married. I would have been like, cool, dude, let's take care of it. Let's get a divorce. We'll figure it out. And we before I found out he was a full-blown sociopath, I was like, we probably could have been friends and had a friendship after that. And I'll never forget the first time I ran into him after all of this, news broke about his affair and like he just like blew up our lives. He was like, you always said if we didn't work out for some reason, we could be friends. I know that we might be far from that now, but I hope we can like have that in the future. And I laughed and was like, you can't do that after you like blatantly disrespected, the marriage, me, my body, like all of the things. But if people in any situation, not even like a cheating or a divorce or any situation in life, would just come up and take accountability and communicate their emotions, 9 times out of 10, the big explosive shit that everybody's so fucking worried about coming forward and talking about in the first place would be avoided.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it would be. But right, in movies and rom-coms, that never happens. That's not part of it. So that's not seen as like the way to go. And I'll have people ask me, like, how do you know, because I work with young adults, like, how do you know when someone's really an adult? And I said, being an adult means that you own up to your mistakes, you say you're sorry, you own your stuff, and and then you're able to move forward. Like that to me is a real sign of someone who is an adult. And the work of Brene Brown and what she's learned from her research and her the years and years she's been doing this research is, right, that's the biggest fear. Our biggest fear in life is being seen as vulnerable. But if we can, actually embracing vulnerability, being vulnerable is the most powerful thing that you can do. If you can go out there and be vulnerable with people and tell them what you're really thinking and feeling and saying what your truth is, which is another phrase that gets used a lot. But if you're able to do that, then you're going to live, her phrase is wholehearted life, but you're going to live a full life. It's not always going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs, but you will live a life that is actually more freeing and makes you stronger than the person that's constantly like, no, that doesn't bother me, or oh, I'm fine, or oh, I'm this, or oh, I'm that. Right.
Yeah. I'm such a big believer in that. And there's so much strength and power in vulnerability. Yeah. And the more people can harness that and really make it a point to live their lives that way, it's incredible what you'll be able to manifest and what will show up for you.
Yes. No, absolutely. But you want it really important. What Brene Brown talks about is like, you have to have trust for vulnerability. So it does not, vulnerability is not just, talking to everybody the minute you see them and telling them exactly what you think. And you cannot, you have to be vulnerable. You need to have trust. To have trust, you need to be vulnerable. So the relationships that you're vulnerable with, those need to be trustworthy relationships. So that's the other part of it too, is if you're in this really toxic relationship, that is not a trustworthy relationship. This is not the time, so if you can't be vulnerable with your partner, and if you can't trust your partner, that's huge. So that kind of keeps you, just to draw it back to what we're saying in the beginning, it's like, it draws you back a little bit into this cycle of, like getting into these toxic relationships where you're never really able to, right? Like fully say what you want to say, be yourself, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there were so many moments in our discussion where people listening were like, oh shit, which I love because there was so much good stuff in here. Tess, I can't thank you enough for sharing all this and joining us. Can you tell everybody where they can find you online if they want to come check out more of your work and information?
Yes, absolutely. So the best place to find me is my website. It's just my name, Tess Brigham, Tess Brigham Coaching, either one, .com. And I have a mailing list, free mailing list every week. It's called Sunday Mornings with Tess. So when you go onto the website, you can find it there to sign up. And I have products and I do courses and all that. You can find it all on the website. But if you're an Instagram person, I am also on Instagram, Tess_Brigham. And I give a lot of the tips and tricks and information that we're talking about here today. This is a lot of what I talk about on Instagram and in my reels and all of that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank Tess so much for coming on and giving all of us those oh shit and aha moments in today's episode. I hope you guys got as much out of it as I did and are working on retraining those fucking brains. All right, we are going to take a turn now and jump into some of your FML stories. Here's number 1.
My name is Amy, aka Maya Soul, and do I have a FML story for you? I hugged someone at a party. As we hugged, I felt the fireball of energy ignite in my root chakra, burning throughout my entire body, shooting out the top of my head like a firework. This in turn triggered my Kundalini spiritual awakening within me. As he walked away, I thought to myself, wow, what was that? Where are you going? Take me home with you. I love you. All weird thoughts to have considering I was home and married to someone else. The rose-colored glasses came off instantly. I realized that my husband was very toxic. He was narcissistic, controlling, and abusing me on so many different levels. It made me physically sick to be around him. On the other hand, the person who I hugged was obsessively in my headspace 24/7 and I couldn't get him out. It was annoying. We became full-blown telepathic. He was sending me visions through his eyes. And bonus, orgasms from a distance. My spiritual gifts intensified. I was seeing shadow people, orbs, and white figures. Spirit was sending me messages at an alarming rate, and I didn't know what to do or how to control it. I felt like I was going insane as I watched my entire life fall apart and fade into the darkness within 4 months' time. This was why I published my personal diary into a tell-all book. I want to be that guiding light that I didn't have on this journey. Igniting the flame within, my twin flame story to union, is actually my story back to finding the love within myself. Because if you don't love yourself, who can love you the way you deserve to be loved? I faced some of my deepest, darkest shadows and dove deep, but I came out on the other side, and I am so proud of me. I am publishing a second book on how to navigate a spiritual awakening and heal on a soul level. For more information, you can check out my website, www.mayasoul1111.com. Again, it's www.mayasoul, S-O-U-L, 1111.com. I love you all. Bye for now.
Holy shit. Okay, first of all, I swear to God, we don't pre-select these fucking FML stories. And it always is so funny to me how perfectly they fit into each episode. Little side note, I did, when she DM'd me originally, tell her that she could please drop the name of her book and feel free to plug it. I did not know her story in depth. I need to know so many fucking things. I need to know how there were orgasms happening from a distance. I need to know if you continued talking to this person. I need to know if you guys ended up together. Were there orgasms in person? I need so many fucking answers. I'm in. You sold me. I'll be reading the fucking book. Okay, here is story number 2.
Hey Gabrielle, this is my FML story high school edition. So I'm going to set the scene for you. I am a 16-year-old socially awkward introvert who didn't have a lot of friends, and my American history class was mainly boys, also 16. I was wearing a skirt, sandal wedges, and a thong. There was one boy in the class that liked to pick on me because he thought he was flirting. And we had those stupid chairs where the desk was connected to the chair, and I was trying to slip through 2 of them to get to my desk when he decided to slam the 2 desks together to trap me in between them, thinking he was being funny. However, I was also mid-step and ended up only getting 1 ankle caught. And I tripped trying to get out of his little game. Unfortunately, I tripped, fell forward, had to catch myself on the chair that I almost smacked into, broke my arm, sprained my ankle, and had to go to the nurse's office because, oh, did I mention I broke my arm? Yeah, the highlight of that for everybody in the class was that my skirt flew up to my head, and every 16-year-old boy in that class saw my behind. Needless to say, I was thankful it was a Friday and I got to stay home for the weekend because I did not want to show my face in that class again. The teacher, who was also male, didn't have much sympathy for me. He was not very sympathetic to my situation. He was kind of mean to the girls, and basically just every time this boy picked on me from there out, told me I got what I deserved. So needless to say, Gabrielle, high school was not my favorite 4 years of my life. Luckily, I've gone on to bigger and better things since then. However, I definitely don't miss high school.
Okay, so first of all, fuck you, teacher. I mean, what the actual fuck? She broke her arm. And let's talk about how traumatizing it is as a 16-year-old girl in high school to unintentionally flash your ass in a thong, which is essentially nothing, to all of these boys that are picking on you. I had an experience, I think it was my junior year, and I was dating my high school sweetheart, didn't give a shit, would like go in a messy bun with like sweats on. And we were all outside in the quad, we called it, area. And I will never forget this guy who I was friends with comes up to me, and his name was Ali, just to put you on fucking blast, bro. Comes up behind me when I'm having a conversation with my girlfriend and straight up pulls my sweatpants down to my ankles. And I was wearing nothing but a thong and had to literally bend down, like squat down, ass out, and pull my fucking sweats up with like all of these people around me. And it was so mortifying, even with my I don't give a fuck attitude. It was mortifying. So I can't imagine not having that and having that happen to you. Oh my God, girl. I am so sorry. What a awful freaking FML moment and memory to have. And again, fuck that teacher. Not cool, bro. As always, make sure you guys are subscribed so you never miss an episode. Keep up with us on Instagram at FML Talk Podcast for all the behind the scenes goodies and our giveaways that we do monthly. If you need more FML Talk content, you can come join us on Patreon, where there are full mini bonus episode seasons. They are all wildly uncut and all of the juicy shit that we cannot air publicly on this show. As always, have a self-love cocktail on me and track your fucking thoughts. Bye.